So moving and grooving right along, I invite you to read the bios of our two incredible Davids that are going to be joining us on stage in just a moment. These two incredible educators and leaders, we're so thrilled to have them joining us today. So now without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage David C. Banks, Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education, and David King, Director of Education at the Apollo Theater and member of the Roundtable's Board of Directors.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Whee! Okay. This is an honor. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to, I guess, formally introducing you to our community, if you will. So much to say, but I'll just get to the point because it's
Wait a minute, before you get started, because you just blew me away as I came up on the stage here. He said my godfather, Everton, said to tell you hello. I didn't know that his godfather is one of my dearest friends in the world. And that immediate connection, and he's a musician.
Yes.
So he's a trumpeter. He's taught, he created a trumpet academy at my school, the Eagle Academy, taught countless young men how to play the trumpet. I had no idea. But this is family, as far as I'm concerned.
This is the opposite of a gotcha, right? So I'm going to be asking you, sir, a list of questions that were submitted by our community here. Some of it has been edited and whatnot, but here we go.
It's all right, please.
You have said that the arts help, quote, feed the soul. So can you share why you believe that the arts are essential to New York City public school education?
Well, first of all, let me just start out by saying good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And you have no idea how happy I am to be here. First of all, it's my first time in this space. How many of you, this is your first time here? And so a lot of new faces in this place. And I absolutely want to come back here and just really take this place in. I'm a kid from Brooklyn, born and raised in Crown Heights, not far from here, right? And so, and I've been down here many times, brought students of mine when I was a teacher, right here to BAM, and always try to do the best that I could to take advantage of this kind of this cultural prism of Brooklyn. And so it feels good, first of all, just to be here and starting my day. I just want to say thank you to everyone who invited me to be here. Tracy, thank you so much for your leadership and all that you do. I would say to you that when I said that arts feeds the soul, I believe that art and the arts, storytelling, spoken word, dance, music, visual arts, are inherent in our own DNA. And our job really as adults is to cultivate that. Not everybody is built to be a great singer. Lord knows I'm not. But everybody has some form of artistic expression inside of them. And I see our role as adults as helping to cultivate that as young people on their journey from being a child to being an adult. A big part of their educational experience is supposed to be getting a level of exposure and development in their own humanity, their own creativity. And that's what I say when I say it feeds the soul. It's more than just an assignment in school. It speaks to just who you are, your humanness. Music is like a universal language. It doesn't matter where in the world you're from. When you hear the rhythm of a drum, you can't help but be moved. It helps to teach us about other people and other cultures, and so all of that is what I mean when I say that it feeds the soul. No matter what you're going through, even in times of real challenge and trauma, which is what this pandemic has represented, you can dance your way through. You can sing your way through. You can paint your way through. It's that medium that allows you to get it out. It becomes a healing for the world. It's how we connect with one another as human beings. So that's what I mean when I say that art feeds the soul, the spirit of who we are just as a people.
The gentleman knows how to do a segue. So, that said, you've already touched on this question, but if you want to go a little deeper, feel free to. But as students, principals, teachers, school partners work to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, right? As we know, it's still ongoing. To work to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on academic achievement, specifically and support the whole child. What role do you see then the arts playing in that way?
Let me tell you, I have said to Maria, which by the way, I want to acknowledge in this moment, as the Department of Education went through its most challenging time, certainly during my lifetime in this pandemic, steering our way through that took great leadership, people with courage and vision and fortitude, and to continue to lift up the arts, which very easily could have been put on the side, further on the side. But the arts department at the Department of Education, I think, did an amazing job. That's the whole team. I got to know them as I came into office. But the person who really led that work and kept everybody together, and not just from the technical aspects of what we have to do, but from spirit. Right? A good person that people are drawn to and continue to work, because even good people have to be inspired. And that person for us at the DOE, and I've come to know her and have great respect for her, and she's going to be taking the new role as the senior advisor to the Chancellor, and that's Maria Palmer. Leadership is critically important, and the right kind of leadership is critically important. You have to have people who have the right touch, and I've become very fond of Maria since I became the Chancellor. I didn't know her before, but a sweetness of spirit and a strength of connection, and how she connects with people and how she leads. And I just wanted you to know publicly how much I very much appreciate that, and how much I'm still going to need you to continue to advise me. So you have to come to work every single day now, right? So we're going to pick your spots and what you're most comfortable with. But I'm going to need your expertise to continue to advise me and to continue to advise Paul. We made a decision to bring Paul Thompson on as the new leader for this work. And I'm excited about Paul. I've known him for many, many years. And he brings a one-time in-school perspective. And somebody who's literally coming right out of the classroom. He's been a principal, founding principal of the Urban Assembly School for Music and Art at Bard. He's a musician himself, and is, I think, an amazing leader, an amazing champion for this work as well. And I couldn't be happier that he now will come to be a part of this team to help me, to help Maria as we drive this work forward under this new administration. And so please stand up, Paul Thompson. I'm going to lead and if you don't know him, I certainly invite you to begin to get to know Paul. So I start with all that to say that leadership is critically important. We can have the best ideas, but if we don't have the proper leaders in place to drive and to inspire, we can do some things, but we won't be as impactful as we possibly could be. And so, what was your question again?
What role essentially then do you see the arts playing in mitigating the effects of COVID on academic achievement right now? So what role does the arts play in that?
I think the arts in its various forms plays and will continue to play the most critical role. You know, it's funny, this question gets asked of me all the time, not about arts per se, but just about, you know, kids coming off of the pandemic and all the trauma that they've gone through, and what are you going to do? As though there's some answer in a bottle. There's no answer in a bottle. The answer is about relationships young people have with caring adults. That's the most important thing. And the arts is about relationship. It's about connection. It's about expression. And allowing creating a vehicle for them to let it out and to let it in, right? And to me, that's what the arts are really all about. And at its best, with the right adults that are guiding that process, that is how you help young people make their way through challenge. COVID has been a major challenge, but the newsflash, it's not the first trauma that some of these kids have gone through. And it will not be the last. You know, we get knocked down, but we got to know how to get back up. And that our destiny is not to lay on the ground, but to get up and to continue to persevere, to build strength and character. And the arts helps dramatically in how you do that. I believe that deeply. And I'm the least artistic person you'll ever meet. But I have great appreciation for the arts.
I don't know if I buy that. But all right, I respect that. All right, so let's just hone in, stay here for a second and hone in on specific population of students that we're talking about, so we know that it will take years to understand the full impact of COVID, right, on our students, particularly our multilingual learners, our students with disabilities. For years, the cultural community has worked in partnership with schools to support these student communities via arts partnership grants. So just two questions. I'll get to the brass tacks in 1 second. But how do you see the arts supporting multilingual learners and students with disabilities, just in your estimation? How do you see that helping that particular community of students?
Yeah, again, our arts are a universal language. So you think about the fact that we've got thousands of young people who are coming now, being sent here, right, as they cross the border, coming to Texas. And I've got to figure out the game plan for how do we, they'll be coming to our schools in a couple of weeks, and to make sure that we have them fully prepared and ready to go. And it can be a challenge. But again, a young person who may not understand English on day one understands music, understands sound, understands the arts. That's what I mean when I say it's from birth. It is the universal language. And when we recognize that, it just makes the ability for us to connect and help all students, students with multilingual students, or anybody, students with special needs, students that don't have any of those other kinds of issues. Just it is the language by which you can connect all of the dots. So I get that. I know it intuitively. Here's the challenge that we have, and this is the challenge that we have before all of us. The arts have always been, you've always had to fight for the arts. And that shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to fight for extra funding for the arts, as though it's just something that we do on the side. Years ago, our arts were much more fundamental to the entire educational experience. At a time when I think our education system was operating at a much higher level. But over the last 25, 30 years, a lot of things happened to our school system. And it's not that people cared any less, but I think a game was kind of played on us to some degree, where we essentially have been told, and school leaders, I was a principal for 11 years, were told that the only thing that matters is how well your kids do on standardized exams, right? And that message is what fundamentally pushed the arts to the side. But anybody who understands youth development and how young people grow and develop in the most proactive ways understands that the arts are essential to that. In fact, you cannot do it well without the arts. And so what I'm trying to do now is to be a champion for the arts, not just for art's sake, but a champion for the arts to help even the powers that be, state education department and others, understand that we cannot even achieve the highest levels of standardized exams unless the arts are built into the very fabric of everything that we do every single day. So that's kind of where we are and how I see it.
You heard the man. Thank you. A brass tacks questions from interested parties here regarding the arts partnership grants. What is the current status of these grants for the upcoming school year?
Yeah, I think the grants are in place but insufficient, right? We need to be working together as an arts community to take the push to get more funding for the arts to the next level. We should not be in a position where we're fighting for a few extra dollars for a few more schools. We should be flush with resources for the arts. That will only happen if we are able to establish that the arts are a critical and essential part of the youth experience. And in order to do that, that means we're going to have to change the narrative. We have to fight back against kind of, again, as I was saying, this notion of just standardized instruction in reading and math are the only thing that matter. They do matter, but they're not everything. And so I'm going to really need the help of this community. I stand more than ready, and I mean this very earnestly, I stand more than ready to be the arts champion for New York City Public Schools. To lift it up at a level that maybe it has not been lifted up in a long time. That it needs to be a part of everything that I'm talking about, and it needs to be a part of everything that you all are talking about together. Because otherwise, it's just an isolated advocacy initiative. Folks who believe in the arts and they'll say, that's nice, that's wonderful, it's cute. We don't want it to be cute. We want it to be essential. But we cannot move the needle on that unless we are working very strategically together. There are going to be times when I'm going to need to call on you. I'm going to call Maria, I'm going to call Paul and say, and we're going to call Jody Arnold. We're going to say, I need folks to come out, to show up. A show of force in order to demonstrate that it's not just me talking, but that there is a community across the city who believe very deeply in this issue, and that's how you move stuff. That's how you move stuff. You have to advocate for it. You have to push for it. And I'm just telling you, I stand ready to stand with you to do that because I think it's just that important.
According to the Arts in Schools report, only 34% of middle schools are meeting New York City State Education Department requirements, with hundreds of schools out of compliance with the NYSED instructional requirements. How do you plan to work with school and district leaders to properly enforce and implement city and state arts learning mandates?
So first of all, again, when we talk about leadership, it starts with leadership. I don't know how many of you heard, but one of the biggest things that we did walking in the door was to put in place the superintendents across the city. I'm making a big bet on the superintendents. We actually had executive superintendents. They sat above the superintendent. I eliminated that position, saved the funding from that and pushed it and said, I I just need the superintendents. Like, we didn't need these various, I thought it was just too many levels of bureaucracy. And so now we have 45 superintendents, many of them are new in their roles, and even those who are returning knowing that this is a new administration, this is a different call to action, and that the arts are critically important to this chancellor, right? And so, and one thing I will tell you is that people respond to the direction that is given. So if you're a chancellor that doesn't really talk about the arts, that's not important to you, then those who work for you will say it's not a priority. I mean, we know it's a good thing, but he didn't say it was a priority. He established other priorities. And the arts is a priority for me. Because I've got a few priorities, but the arts connects to all of it. Like one of my top priorities is around literacy. Just building a solid foundation of reading and math. You know, 65% of black and brown children in New York City never achieve reading proficiency in our school system. Just think about that. As large as our budget is, 65%. That's not because people don't care. It's not because people are not committed. It's because our fundamental approach to how we even teach reading is wrong. And I think misguided. And we're making some changes there. You can build a stronger literacy foundation using the arts. We've got, I call this bright starts and bold futures. Bright starts, building that solid literacy foundation. Bold futures is about career pathways. You know, what do we expect you to do, and how are we going to help you ultimately be what you want to be when you leave our school system? Well, the arts can help in that as well. In fact, there are many career pathways through the arts that we want to make sure that young people are exposed to. I might have been a musician, Paul. Had somebody actually prepared me and exposed me. I got one semester where I learned to mess around with a snare drum. That was it. You know, I often say that Tiger Woods, we would have never known the greatness of Tiger Woods unless his father put that golf club in his hand. If kids don't have the exposure to the arts, it's hard to master the arts. And so for me, it's about exposure. So I've said to our superintendents, this is really important, and I need them also working together. So here's what that means. You're in a particular district in the city, and you may have a whole host of various, arts programs that are really helpful to the kids, that go beyond just the art teacher in the school. It's community-based organizations that are bringing in the arts. And then there's another part of the city that would love to take advantage of those programs. They don't know anything about it. They don't even know that they exist. So I've said we got to, from a strategy standpoint, we got to connect the dots. I don't want people working and operating in silos. I want all the superintendents sharing best practices across the city. Because I'm not interested in you telling me about your district and how great it is, and the district right next to you is struggling. I want everybody to win. And the only way that you can all win is if we are sharing and learning together. I do believe that all the resources that we need, not necessarily the financial resources, but the human capital, is actually there. It's all around the city. But it's operating in silos. My job is to connect those dots. And I think if we do a better job of that, we'll be able to lift and create many more opportunities for young people just by doing that alone.
A few more questions from me before we turn it over to the audience. But so yes, human capital. Funny enough, a vast majority of the questions submitted were around sustaining and increasing arts funding. Just where we are.
Sure.
So in spite of loss of enrollment's impact on fair student funding and possible implications of a smaller class size mandate. So with this in mind, what specific challenges does arts education face, just in your estimation, coming into this school year?
It's going to be a challenge. Not only this school year, but what's coming next year. So I just want to let everybody know, like we're heading for major fiscal challenges. And it's never good. Nobody wants to sit there as a chancellor saying that. No man wants to sit there and say, I'm taking all kind of incoming right now. around some of the cuts that were put in place. But not cuts that I put in place. I mean, the mayor and the city council negotiate the city budget. And people are like, what are you going to do, Chancellor? Right? And so I don't want to be the one that said we're taking a dime away from anything. But it becomes part of the fiscal reality that we're dealing with. Next year is going to be tougher than this year. So what role do we play if we don't want the arts to suffer? We may not get everything we're looking for through tax levy dollars, but I firmly believe that there is a philanthropic community that believes deeply in this work. We ought to be working very closely together with a very strong pitch that we take to Darren Walker at the Ford Foundation, right? And others who I think would get it if we are all together on this. And so again, when I say I stand ready to be that champion, that's what I mean. Because there are other resources that we could avail ourselves of, and we need to be working on that right now together. So I can tell you, I've never met a bigger advocate than Jody Arnold. From the moment that I became the chancellor. I mean, I'm just telling you, she's a force of nature. She's a very special individual. I fell in love with her the very first conversation that I had with her, and I appreciate that drive. It's a challenge to me, and it's what it takes, because you have to understand, when you sit in the seat as chancellor, the amount of issues that come before you every single day can be absolutely overwhelming, and you've got to keep your eye on the prize. And Jody reminds me all the time, do not forget the arts. Do not forget the arts. Do not forget the arts. Because you can forget it. Even though you have the best of intentions. Because you have so many people coming all the time advocating for the things that they want to see you invest in. And all those things are important as well. And so I've got to try to strike just the right chord. You saw the analogy there? I'm going to get it there. But to make sure that the arts, are not left on the sideline at all. And not only not left on the sideline, but that we make the arts truly central to all that we do. That's what I really want to do. And but I'm going to need help. I'm going to need a community behind me to make that happen. I can tell you right now, the state education department right now sits in a moment of real challenge around the fact that they are hearing from people. Our kids came back different after the pandemic. And we can't just go back to what we were doing before. Because what we were doing before wasn't working for lots of kids anyway. But it's one thing to say that. It's another thing to know a new path forward. And the state education department, at its core is still a bureaucracy. It doesn't change on a dime. And so it needs advocates to consistently push it. Because the city, Chancellor's office, is still a subsidiary of the state. Education is a state mandate. And there are many things that are put on us that we have to do because we are functionary of the state. And so you have to recognize where those points are that you have to put pressure. And at the state level is a huge part of where the pressure and the advocacy has to happen. And so that's what I mean when I say we have to work together strategically in order to help to move the needle on some things. And the state is trying to do it. They recognize it as well, that they have to do things differently. And they are they're coming up with some new ways to do it, but we have to continue to keep the pressure on as well. That will give us more the freedom that we need to drive innovation and the arts.
In the interest of time, I'm going to ask you two-ish questions. The first being, how can we move away from seeing arts programming? I hear the passion in your voice. I hear you, being an advocate or arts champion right now in your position, right? It's heard and appreciated.
Sure.
So how can we move away from seeing arts programming as quote-unquote enrichment or quote-unquote extracurricular and move more towards it being one of these required subjects in public school?
Again, it goes back to the advocacy. When I say I want to be a champion also means What I say to the mayor, right, when I'm having conversation with the mayor, the conversations with the governor, and the conversations with the state education department. And so it's a level of advocacy that it requires to change. So it's not just, hey, look at me, I'm the champion. That doesn't mean anything. It's about what are you championing and how are you championing. That's the strategic stuff that I'm talking about. And so we need to ensure that there's policy change. That's how you cement it. And I get it, but it'll only happen if there's a community that's backing it. And that's what I mean when I say we have to work together.
There's definitely a community that will back you. I'm proud to be a part of it, I can tell you that right now. So staying here real quick, this is part of the two-ish. What strategies do you envision for broadening the school day curriculum so instructional time in the arts is not crowded out of the school day or lost due to budget?
Yeah, that's all connected, right? And those are things that are, they don't happen overnight, but also, you know, one of my pillars that we created, I created 4 pillars as kind of my way forward as Chancellor. One was about health and wellness, and measuring its impact on student success. Another one was around rebuilding trust with parents and families and community. Another one is about reimagining the school experience. That's where the arts really fits. But the 4th one was about to scale, sustain, and restore what works, and lifting up those best practices across the city. And there are schools which are being much more innovative in how they're using time to lift up the arts. I have to, in being a champion, I have to lift up those schools so that everyone can see what they're doing. And learn from it, and build their own capacity for change. Because many schools don't know how to change unless they're shown. They need a blueprint for it. And there are schools who offer themselves up as a blueprint. I have to lift that so that everybody else can see how they're actually doing that. And I'll just tell you, for me personally, as I've gone around to schools, and I've been in every borough multiple times since I've been chancellor the first 7 months, I would tell you overwhelmingly, kids have talked about arts, and they talked about just the relevance of their educational experience. They're engaged in too many things that they don't even know why they're doing it. They're just going to school. It's what I call schooling, which is different than educating, right? And really developing critical thinking. I mean, you take an art demonstration like we just had, right? There's so many lessons to learn, cultural lessons. I think he's from Nigeria. Did he say Nigeria?
Ghana.
From Ghana, I'm sorry. But being from Ghana, right? So talking about Ghana, talking about the connection between Ghana and the United States. There's so much that you can use that still gets you to literacy and math and science and all those things, but you still lifted up the arts. There's some places that are doing that really, really well. Others are still doing it in isolation. We do math, then we do science, then we do reading, and then if we have a few minutes left, we'll do the arts, right? And so helping other schools to see a new approach to how you can do it all, that's what I intend to do to help other schools learn new ways, new methods of getting it done.
Speaking of language, based on what you were just saying, a question popped up in my head and I feel compelled to ask. So then at the end of this, with support from the community, with your own intentions and passions toward being an arts champion, at the end of whatever the end of your term may be, what's success going to look like to you? What's it going to feel or look or what's that going to be?
Well, first of all, I would tell you, my goal is, from a foundational standpoint, to ensure that every child in New York City can read by the end of the 3rd grade. That is like my basic framework of where I'm starting. With a budget as large as ours, there should be no child who cannot read in a school system as rich as this. So that's number one. Number two, I want to ensure that every child who graduates from our schools has a very strong post-secondary plan. Where are they going? Are you clear about your next steps? It means nothing to me to grant these young people a diploma, congratulations, they take a bow, and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't know where they're going. You go to college, you have the skills that you need to not only go to college, to graduate from college. Or do you have a career pathway that you're on? You know, let me give you a quick aside, I'm going to connect this to the art. 2012, I think it was, we had 80,000 ninth graders in 2012. 4 years later, we graduated, I think it was about 67% of those kids. 6 years later, we gave them a 6-year run for a college degree. Only 18,000 of those students wound up with a college degree. Now think about that. 80,000 that started in the 9th grade, 10 years later, only 18,000 with a college degree. And yet in our schools, all we talk about is, you gotta go to college, you gotta go to college, you gotta go to college. I'm meeting with corporate CEOs who are saying, we need kids who are graduating from your schools to be able to do some stuff. Like, we have jobs, we will hire them. But you're graduating students who are not graduating from college, and they don't even have the skills that they need to take their rightful place in this 21st century economy. I want to change that. What I think the arts does, the arts inspire, the arts make you come alive to even position yourself for any of these things. The arts, to me, are like the blood that flows through your veins. And you got to cultivate that. It's like the air that you breathe in. That's critically important. None of those other things matter if you don't even have a sense of your own humanity. That's what the arts does. That's what I mean when I say it feeds the soul. The arts become that vehicle for your humanness, and help you think about innovation in new and different ways. So we've gotten it wrong because we look at these things in isolation, and they should not be in isolation. Our humanness is all connected, and the arts should be essential to any and everything that we do.
So I think we came full circle. Yeah, give us some. This is a place for me to end. I think some things I pulled out gleaned from what you were saying. First of all, you're speaking jazz for me. I'm a fan, Coltrane fan. Who isn't, right? But you're speaking jazz and humanness. Connection, getting out of silos, speaking to the whole child. A budget of this size should actually, put some meat on the table. You never said that expression, I'm doing that. Sorry, vegetarians. And what does it look like at the end? Like, what we want our advocacy to count for something, right? So there's many people here who are gonna be there with you, alongside you, behind you, sometimes in front of you, saying, "Come catch up." So with that said, just thank you so much for, again, being here, for your time. We're not done yet. Just want to say on my behalf, on the Roundtable's behalf, as a proud member, or board member of the Roundtable, just thank you for dedicating time to be here. Appreciate it. Will help us take a few questions from the audience. I also want to thank you all for being here, taking time out of your day to be present. And I mean that in all the ways that you think present should be used. Thank you for being present here, not just here today, but months and years before. All the invisible work, all the stuff that you didn't want to do. Sorry, that's not part of my job description. I want to personally thank you for being here. Right. Give yourselves a round of applause. Please, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, and then start at the back. We'll probably have time for about 3 questions or so. And I'll make my way forward. Feel free to stand up as well.
Hi, Chancellor. Thank you for your time with us today. My name is Mario Sarro. I represent the New York City Art Teachers Association from the United Federation of Teachers. We're a professional committee of about over 2,000 plus certified visual art educators in our public schools. And I'm here not just to advocate for the jobs of our members, but exponentially for the thousands of lives that each member guides and touches. To echo your remarks today, the role of the arts in our students' lives can't be overemphasized. For many of our students, creative outlets motivate them and keep them going to and engaged in school and their academic life. The arts have always been crucial in the creative, academic, and social well-being of our students. More so during the pandemic, when we saw the role the arts played in helping students heal and express themselves. Chancellor Blanks, we're pleased you agree that the arts are not only important for our students' creative and academic growth, but for their mental, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. In light of the mayor's education cuts, we see the majority of the schools losing some funding, and some schools losing as much as 30% of their previous year budget. Along with Controller Brad Lender's analysis that shows the city has funds to reverse these cuts, and the August 5th court ruling permitting a city council revote on education spending. Knowing that, I would like to ask, what do you see your role in reversing some of these cuts and protecting our children and dedicated arts teachers? Thank you.
I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. First of all, I thank you for the role you play in the arts and working in the schools. And in fact, I'd love to create an opportunity to actually meet with all of the arts leaders from around the city. I think that's important that we do. And so, Paul, Maria, right, let's work on coordinating something like that for my team as well. Yeah, so the question around the budget is one that has been a challenging one for me, right? I mean, as I said, I'm not somebody who wants to see schools lose any level of funding. But yet, the budget for the Department of Education is not created by the Chancellor. It's created through a collective conversation between the City Council and the Mayor. And they're the ones that make the decision on the entire city. Every agency's budget is dictated by them, not by me. And I deal with the budget that I'm given, not the one that I wish that I had. And but what I'm privy to is just some of the challenges that we are facing fiscally. And so we got to continue to fight through and do the best that we can. There are still hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to be coming into the schools as well over the course of the next couple of months as well. So I think that the cuts as we describe them are essentially a fiscal reality that we're dealing with, unfortunately. And I recognize that there's still stimulus funding. And the stimulus funding decision was made to use some now and some for later. Because if they use even more of it now, that same amount will not be there next year. And what I'm telling you is this, please hear me on this. What's coming next year from a fiscal standpoint, this federal stimulus money is about to run out, is going to be a major challenge. That's what we got. That's what I'm spending my time thinking about is how to prepare this system for the reality that we're getting ready to face, and how to ensure that the arts are going to still be good. That's what I'm really very, very focused on. So stay tuned. There's still more things that are getting ready to happen.
Thank you so much, Chancellor. I'm David Shokoff, Director of Education at Manhattan Theater Club, former board member of the Roundtable. Certainly, we all appreciate deeply and resonate with your sentiments and your insights. You mentioned changing the narrative, and I think we all resonated with that sentiment as well. Could you give an example of how you might begin to change the narrative in a room full of a different kind of room, other than the sort of the choir that you're preaching to now?
Yes.
How would you talk to skeptics, bureaucrats, or the Darren Walkers about the value of the arts, or somebody who's not innately predisposed to adhere to what you're saying?
So we just hired, starting next week, a communications director, right, for the New York City Public Schools. We've always had a press office, but what the press office does is to respond to press inquiries, right? So we're always playing defense. And what I've said is that we need to be on the offense. We should be telling proactively the stories and the wonderful things that are going on in our schools. And you can center that with the arts. Years ago when I was a principal, I was a first-year principal, and I had Johnny Cochran was my principal for a day. This was right after the O.J. Simpson case, like literally like a month and a half after the case. So all the national press followed him to my school. And my superintendent at the time was so upset because I was always promoting our school. And he called me in for a meeting, and he said, "You're killing me." And I said, "Why did he say that?" He said, "You always have the press, you always have the press." And he said to me, "My job," his job, he said, "my job is to make sure we don't wind up in the New York Post." And I responded to him, "That's why you don't wind up in the New York Times. If you are only playing to a certain level, the story will be written for you. You have to proactively tell your story, or your story will be written for you." So the goal here in changing the narrative is we want to promote the arts. It's not enough for me to show up at a school that has a wonderful arts program. I have to ensure that there's media that's coming and is covering it, so we are promoting that and letting other families know that this wonderful stuff is going on. I'm blown away by the richness that I'm seeing across the system. And I'm saying, my God, nobody knows about this. Because we have not told our stories. There are other schools, particularly in the charter sector, that do a much better job of marketing and telling their stories proactively. And God bless them. That's what they should be doing. And all we do is play defense. And therefore people think there's nothing good that's going on. And nothing could be further from the truth. So that's what I mean when I say changing the narrative. When I show up at these schools, one of my essential questions is, tell me about your arts program. I want to meet your arts teacher. What's going on here? Is there anything to put on display? When people know that the chancellor is interested in that, they go out of their way to make sure that when you show up, they have that ready to go. That's about changing the narrative as well. And my job is to make sure that it gets promoted, that we tell the world what's happening here. That's what I'm focused on. That's how we're going to change it.
Hello, Chancellor Banks. I'm Sharon Dunn, and I have a history in this business as former head of arts education for the schools. I worked for 7 chancellors, and I'm so honored and thrilled to hear you today. I have one question. The Office of Arts and Special Projects has collected data, real data, that shows us where there are gaps in schools, particularly the middle schools, which you were asked about earlier. How will you use that data to help schools understand what they need to fulfill the providing arts education for all their students, that fulfills the requirements but also fulfills the humanity that you would like to address?
Absolutely. And again, a lot of that is what I'm going to be doing through our superintendents. I've empowered these superintendents. The last several years, the superintendents have not been as empowered. They've been more compliance folks. We've really changed the job description for our superintendents. Eliminated the executive superintendents above them, as I said. Told them that they're going to be really more, they're going to have much more authority. We gave them more resources. I eliminated the BCOs, the borough offices, and everybody now is working for superintendents. They're not working in isolation. So the superintendents are now going to become superintendents kind of like how they were when I was in my early years, where if you went to the superintendent's office, you could get your answers to everything. They had enough people, resources, bodies, dollars. That's what we're doing, and we set the tone with them around this. But we can go deeper with it. And Dom, who's here with me from my team, one of the things we should make a note of is we should make sure that Paul comes in to present directly to all the superintendents for the whole city, together with other members from the team, taking the data from the reports that will help to continue to drive that message. And I'll stand side by side with that as well, so people will recognize that. Anything that we think is critically important, we're lining up those folks to come and speak to the superintendents and to help to drive it there.
I just want to add
Yes.
one point, if I may.
Please.
One of the things that was effective in the past, and I think it's very effective to this day,
Yes.
is that every superintendent had an individual in the organization, the leadership,
Right.
who was responsible for the arts programs, for coordinating how to work with someone there
Right.
at that level, I think would be a wonderful
I'm
thing
in full
to do.
agreement. Full agreement. Thank you. You took note of that, right? Before we do wrap up, I want to recognize a young lady. Mama, please stand up, please. This is a young lady who interned with us for this summer. She just graduated from Stuyvesant High School, and she's starting her first year at Baruch College. And so, she's been wonderful and amazing in our office. I want her to stay with us since she's going to be in the city. But please just offer her a word of encouragement as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing with us. And congratulations.
Yes,
Bring a leg
yes,
in your first year.
CUNY.
Yes, CUNY
I
grad
don't
year too.
support the Stuyvesant, I'm a Brooklyn Tech grad. Sorry, but well done.
Well, thank you all so much. I wish we could keep chatting for the rest of today, but unfortunately, just to be respectful of everybody's time, we're going to pause right here. A huge thank you to Chancellor Banks and also to